Welcome back, everyone. I'm really glad you're here. But I have to be honest, today's update comes with a lot of frustration, confusion, and honestly disappointment across the entire market. Because what we experienced over the last 24 hours is the exact opposite of what many traders and investors were Cardano expecting, and it has shaken confidence in the short term. A lot of us, including myself, were under the impression that we were moving toward a more stable and positive direction, especially after seeing the price action earlier in the week, where markets started to show signs of recovery. The information provided in this video is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered financial, investment, or trading advice. I am not a financial advisor, and all opinions expressed are based on personal research and market observations. Cryptocurrency and financial markets are highly volatile and involve significant risk, and you should always do your own research, DWAR, before making any investment decisions. Never invest more than you can afford to lose. The content in this video may include forward-looking statements that are not guaranteed and are subject to change at any time. By watching this video, you agree that you are solely responsible for your own financial decisions and actions. Momentum was building, and sentiment was gradually improving, but then, suddenly, everything flipped, and last night's developments completely changed the tone of the market, leading to an immediate and sharp drop across crypto, including a noticeable decline in Cardano and Bitcoin BTC. And that's exactly what we need to break down today, while also looking at some other important updates that could shape what happens next. Right now, there are more questions than answers. Uncertainty is high, and the market is reacting emotionally, which is something we've seen time and time again during major macro-driven events. So it's important to stay grounded and understand what's actually happening instead of reacting purely based on fear. If you look at the charts, this is honestly a very discouraging setup, not just for ADA, but for the broader crypto market, including Bitcoin, because what we saw after those lows earlier in the week, especially around Tuesday, was actually a strong bounce, followed by a period of consolidation where prices held relatively steady, and that kind of price action usually builds anticipation for a potential breakout, and that's exactly what many traders were expecting as we moved into yesterday. The excitement was driven by the belief that tensions were easing globally, particularly with signals pointing toward de-escalation, and that narrative was one of the key reasons why we saw upward momentum not just in crypto, but also a drop in oil prices, which further supported the idea that markets could stabilize and potentially move higher. However, everything changed when unexpected geopolitical statements came out, completely reversing that narrative and injecting a new wave of uncertainty into the market. And when you have that kind of sudden shift, markets react instantly, which is exactly what we saw with prices dropping sharply at the time of the announcement, erasing gains and sending Bitcoin and altcoins like ADA right back to previous lows that we had seen earlier in the week and even over the weekend. This kind of move is frustrating because it shows how fragile market sentiment currently is, where even a single development can undo days of progress. And it puts us right back into a position where patience becomes the most important strategy. Now, shifting focus slightly, this wasn't just limited to crypto because broader financial markets also reacted heavily, with massive amounts of market value being wiped out in a very short period of time, showing just how sensitive global markets are to sudden changes in macro conditions. And as we head into today's session, there is a strong cognitive that traditional markets like the S&P 500, Nasdaq, and Dow could open in the red, reflecting continued pressure and uncertainty. At the same time, oil prices have surged significantly, which is another signal of rising geopolitical tension. And interestingly, while you might expect safe haven assets like gold and silver to rise during times of uncertainty, both of those actually declined, which adds another layer of confusion to the current market behavior and suggests that investors are still trying to figure out how to position themselves in this environment. Meanwhile, in crypto, we're seeing ADA down and BTC also under pressure. And while the day is still ongoing and things can change, the overall sentiment has clearly shifted toward caution and fear, and many people are simply hoping to get through the next few days without any additional negative surprises. Now, there are also some other developments worth paying attention to, because not everything is negative, and some of these updates could play a role in stabilizing sentiment moving forward, particularly when it comes to global trade routes and agreements, where there are indications that certain regions are still allowing smooth transit without additional barriers, which, if sustained, could help reduce some of the tension and uncertainty that markets are currently pricing in. On the regulatory side, one of the biggest things to watch over the next 48 hours is the potential progress on legislation related to crypto, specifically discussions around stablecoin provisions and broader regulatory clarity. And if there is any positive movement here, it could act as a catalyst for the market, especially considering how important clear regulations are for institutional participation. Looking ahead, there is also the possibility that broader legislation could be finalized in the coming weeks, which would mark a significant milestone for the crypto industry as a whole. And this ties directly into the long-term outlook for projects like Cardano, because increased clarity and institutional access are key factors that could unlock major growth. Speaking of Cardano specifically, there is actually some positive news emerging, with reports highlighting increasing institutional interest in its privacy-focused infrastructure. And this is important because it shows that despite short-term price weakness, there is still growing attention and recognition at a higher level, which could translate into stronger adoption over time, especially as more people begin to revisit projects they may have previously overlooked. This is how narratives shift in the market. Slowly at first, and then all at once. And Cardano coming back into the spotlight could be a sign of things to come once broader conditions improve. Another factor to consider is market leverage, because over the past 24 to 48 hours, there has been a significant amount of liquidations, with hundreds of millions of dollars wiped out, particularly from long positions. And this kind of reset is actually a normal part of market cycles, even though it can be painful in the short term, because it clears out excessive risk and can set the stage for more stable price action moving forward. Right now, the market is clearly in a state of indecision, hovering between fear and extreme fear. And when you're in this kind of environment, the best approach is often to stay patient, avoid overreacting, and look for opportunities rather than focusing solely on the downside. There is still a large amount of trading volume in the market, which means interest hasn't disappeared, and where there is activity, there is always potential for recovery once conditions stabilize. So overall, what we're dealing with right now is a combination of geopolitical uncertainty, market overreaction, and a reset in sentiment, all happening at the same time. And while that creates short-term pressure, it doesn't necessarily change the long-term outlook, especially for strong projects and the industry as a whole. The key now is to watch how things develop over the next few days, see whether tensions ease or escalate further, and pay close attention to any regulatory updates that could influence market direction. To wrap it all up, yes, this situation is frustrating. Yes, the market took a hit, and yes, uncertainty is high. But this is also a reminder of how quickly conditions can change and why patience and discipline are so important in this space. Because opportunities often come when sentiment is at its lowest. I appreciate you all for being here and staying informed through all of this. Let me know your thoughts and how you're approaching the market right now. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Stay safe, stay patient, and I'll catch you in the next one.